Thanks, Cathal. Good morning, everybody. So it is my job to introduce our first session, which has our three keynote speakers. And as Cathal said, they're coming from across our library sector. We have three speakers. We have Alan Carbery, who's currently working in UCC and has a wide range of experience in academic libraries, who is currently Head of Academic Technologies and Communication in UCC and is going to give us all the perspective from the academic libraries. We have Marion Higgins, who is the Kildare County Librarian, the current President of the LAI, and is going to give us the perspective from our public libraries. And we have Aoife Lawton, who is with the HSE, and she's going to give us the Health Services Librarian perspective. So lots of really interesting talks. Each talk is 20 minutes long, so with three speakers will follow one after the other. We're leaving the questions to later on in the session. The questions will be dealt with in a separate session, and myself and Elaine will be watching the time. So each of our speakers has 20 minutes, and I'll be letting each speaker know when there is 2 minutes coming up towards the end. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Alan Carbery from UCC to begin our talks. Thank you. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Mary. Hi, everyone. And I just wanted to say thanks to Cathal and Elaine and the whole team at Maynooth University for the invitation to speak to this and for bringing us all together. It's I really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all of the different various perspectives and the operations and sort of the work that we've been doing over the last 9 weeks. So my job is to tell you a little bit about the academic library response to COVID-19 over the last 9 weeks. And as I was starting to pull this story together, I sort of became overwhelmed in some ways. There's so much so many great initiatives that our colleagues are doing right across the academic library sector. I hope I'll give you a snapshot or a flavour of what that response looks like, but sort of big caveat that again, so much happening that I'm not sure I can encapsulate everything that everyone is doing, but I'll do my best to try and give you the sense of what is happening in our sort of academic libraries over the last 9 weeks or so. I suppose for me, as I was thinking about what way we approach this, I think there were two pressure points on particularly academic libraries at the start of this new phase that we're in. Will we ever forget March 12th when that announcement came, and March 13th, where we spent, for most of us, our first full day outside of the library with our doors closed. But I think the two pressures for us were moving our own business, our own operations online, and sort of the preparations and the background and the work that had to be done for that, but also supporting our colleagues within our universities and our institutes of technology and in our own academic institutes, supporting them to move their business online. And so it was sort of like, sort yourself out and then help everyone else move online as well. So it hasn't been an easy task, but I think for a lot of us, the writing was on the wall. I think we were really able to quickly see towards the end of February and the start of March that actually this really strange thing was about to happen. And so for many of us, we had spent sort of the weeks prior to March 12th, March 13th, scrambling together, putting together our business continuity plans for pandemics. You know, things that you would never think in library school that you would ever have to do, it all of a sudden becomes reality. But that time spent at the end of February, certainly in our institution, in my library, was pretty critical. So we were able to use that time before March to sort of get our house in order. Really simple things like making sure that we were able to list all of our staff and the devices that they had, whether it was either personal or work devices. So by the time that March 12th came and we got that directive to close our doors, we were able to funnel technology, funnel sort of work plans to our staff and be able to say to them, we'll see you online, our business is ready to operate as normal. And so we came away on March sort of 13th feeling like, okay, we're as ready as we're going to be for this, and so let's see how this works out. But spending that time thinking and planning as a team was very crucial for us, and I know for a lot of libraries as well. Probably shorter than any of us would have liked, but again, time well spent. And I think the first 2 weeks of this phase that we're in now of sort of working outside of our libraries was incredibly hectic, and firefighting is really the word that comes to mind. Again, even despite all that preparation, there is pockets of requests that you just can't necessarily predict, or the things that everyone else, our users, are starting to struggle with became apparent. And so you know, those first sort of 14 days, including the weekends, were spent doing a lot of that firefighting. And just some of those things that were coming up were, you know, the very basic things, like our users had items out on loan. Some of them were due back in a very short amount of time. And UCD, like ourselves in UCC, and pretty much every single academic library, had to get the message out there really quickly to say to our users, please hold your books. Like, forget about the concept of any fines if you have a fine, but please hold that book that you have out on loan until this pandemic is over, or until this closure is over. And so many of our collections are still out there, as of course are for all libraries. But we learned in UCC that getting that message out there in multiple modes, in multiple formats, in multiple areas was really key, really important. And so never underestimate the power of communication, I suppose, is one of the early lessons that we learned, certainly in our library. Unsurprisingly, for a lot of our academics who were moving their business online and trying to move their teaching and learning online, the issue of copyright and access to particularly textbooks that our teaching staff rely a lot on became a bugbear very, very quickly, particularly in the area of humanities and law in our university, where a lot of those texts are not available digitally, and maybe a lecturer holds a copy of those. Supporting and helping academic staff make sense of copyright law became even more of a demand for us, and even more of a service that we had to quickly adapt to. And I know that our colleagues in IUALG and Thea at the library director level are doing a lot of work and collaboration and talking with ICLA, and that's really appreciated. Again, sort of that access to materials that our users need to keep their business going, and trying to make sense of all of that was a really important initial firefighting activity that all academic libraries had to do. I mentioned this earlier, but communication became absolutely key, and it was very overwhelming, I think, in the first couple of days, the sort of flow of information that was coming at all angles, to figure our own business out, but also trying to understand what the needs of our academic library staff or academic teaching staff in our universities and our institutes, what their issues were, and then also our users as well, who were still trying to make sense of their own worlds. And so I think a lot of academic libraries spent the first few weeks really trying to bring together, as we do always, right, bring together that information, that pertinent information, distill it down and make sure that our users have access to the information that they need. And again, the usual channels of social media and our websites and our sort of chat reference became ever more important. And we've seen massive boosts in traffic to our LibGuides and our websites, and our number of query tickets that we're getting, our sort of frontline reference staff, our Ask Us service in UCC, have become almost like the triage, the face of our library online, as they help users make sense of again, the questions that they had. And again, many of our libraries are really starting to make even more use of social media and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as a way to connect with our users. And I want to particularly shout out my colleagues in UCC who've done a stellar job in really ramping up our activities there. But that communication being key, of course, and unsurprisingly, became a really important part of the work that we do. a huge amount of time has been spent quickly pivoting our existing services that might be very sort of location-centric or item-centric. Pivoting those online very quickly became priority number one for a lot of our library staff. And of course, accessing materials that are typically only available in hard copy format became the absolute priority. So our acquisitions and e-resources staff in all of our libraries have really stepped up to the plate and done fantastic, amazing work that can't be underestimated, and navigated sort of tricky licenses and options for getting access to text. Certainly in our university, we've moved from an acquisition system where we might have done a lot of sort of physical book ordering to pretty much saying, that's not our priority now. Our priority is to investigate and identify where e-access is available. And again, that sounds like a simple thing to do or sort of an obvious thing, but the time and effort and resources that goes into that, particularly in a critical crunch time, is not to be underestimated. And I'm grateful to all of our acquisitions colleagues right throughout the academic library sphere for their help in that. It became obvious very quickly that our publishers were, by and large, doing some really great work for us. They started very quickly in the early days of this to make access to their collections, to expand access to their collections, to ease up their licenses, to give libraries new access to new collections, which is by and large a welcome development, but very quickly became this overwhelming barrage of new information, new resources, new collections particularly for our academic community, that really needed a lot of, again, resources to help understand what it is we were getting, how we would enable access to these collections, and how we would funnel information out around those. And so our academic liaison librarians, our e-resource staff, again, have been playing a blinder in making sense of all of these new collections that are coming out, and indeed bolstering our existing digital collections through temporary trials or temporary access to scholarly materials. Trinity, like many of us, have been bringing all of these new temporary resources together into one space. We've done the same on our library website as well. And I think, you know, the last time I looked, we had close to something like 60 or 70 additional resources that have come on stream in the last 9 weeks. Temporary or on trial or expanded access. Again, huge amount of new knowledge that's sort of coming to our users. And there's a job of work there to make those collections available. A job of work that takes a long time anyway. And again, to do it under the pressure of the situation that we're in now, again, massive kudos to our staff there. And it doesn't just stop at the providing access. Of course, we have to think about how are these resources being used? You know, if our academic communities are so reliant on these new resources that we've never had before, and they're only temporary, what's the contingency plan for when we don't have access to these? I know in my university, we're quite concerned about the fact that summer exams, which have just finished in my university, students will have had access to these temporary resources, but by the time any repeat or any autumn exams comes along, it's quite likely that we won't have access to those. And so what does that mean, right? So how do we compare, or should we even compare sort of academic output when the number of resources that we have is ever moving and ever shifting and ever changing? And again, making sense of all that, the work involved in that is not to be underestimated. I want to, of course, my background is in the area of information literacy instruction, and hat tip and kudos to all library staff who have had to, again, very quickly pivot their instruction, move their instruction online, whether it's face-to-face live online sessions, or whether it's recording very quickly short snippets of instructional material and making them available on our VLEs. Whatever the approach that we've all taken to do that, it's not easy. And it needs to be said that teaching face-to-face in the way that we're used to doing in our academic libraries is absolutely not the same as teaching online. And there are different modes, different ways to approach these things. And at very short notice, our library staff have been tasked to move their instruction online, and it's not easy. But I think by and large, we've done a really excellent job of doing that. I worry about September if we're facing a scenario where we have to do some instruction online. I think that certainly in our university, we rode the benefit of having the last couple of weeks where we have a lower amount of demand for instruction, but what that will look like in September is unknown. And by and large, we're finding that we have to connect in new ways with our users. Our academic liaison librarians in my university spoke about the difficulty that they were having in the early days connecting with their academic colleagues, because again, they were so consumed with moving their business online that the usual interactions that we were not getting them, and so we had to think about connecting with our users in new ways. But now, 9 weeks later, our staff are getting used to delivering research consultations via Zoom or Teams or whatever it might be. Again, if we had sort of predicted that 3 or 4 months ago, I'm not sure we would have even imagined the scenario that we're in. And I think that by and large, all of our libraries have done a really amazing job at providing materials online that really bring down and distill for our users exactly what it is that they need to know at this stage. And UCD have been doing that. Pretty much all of the academic libraries have created new spaces on their websites to distill that information down for everyone. Cathal mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I think that it is a particular point of pride for academic libraries, is that we've responded in our way, in the way that we can, to play our part in supporting our healthcare workers, to support the fight against COVID. Certainly in UCC, I'm really proud of the fact that our research skills teaching room, which is where we typically do our face-to-face instruction, was transformed to become a training room for training volunteers to do contact tracing for the HSE within UCC, and that was an easy thing for us to do. We weren't making use of the room at that time, and so of course we were delighted to support the HSE in that way, to allow them to train new contact tracers, and I know that many others across the country have been doing similar. I don't want to say too much about this because I know that Eileen in Galway will speak about this later, and indeed they were the first, and certainly we in UCC and Maynooth and others followed their lead in 3D printing face visors for the healthcare community. And I just want to check my notes here. I was liaising with my colleague in UCC who coordinated our efforts. We in UCC were part of an initiative with Bench Space in Cork to print 50,000 face shields as part of our network. And we did a lot of fundraising efforts as well. So we were a part of an effort to raise €54,000 for this initiative. Again, I'm so proud of the work that we've done in that area, and we supported the organisation of delivery and logistics for picking up this PPE. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I'm conscious of time, so I'll fly through some of these. Again, Maynooth doing great work in helping our healthcare staff get the rest that they need by moving their energy pod to the hospital. We consider doing similar with our energy pod in UCC as well. Explore the option with Mercy, but weren't able to make it happen in a timely way or in an easy way. And a lot of our universities and our institutes of technology are supporting new research that's happening. A lot of clusters of research groups are forming around COVID-19, and our libraries are supporting them as they begin the research that they're doing. And of course, unsurprisingly, there are new initiatives cropping up within all our libraries. I was really excited to see this by UL. Michelle, happy birthday to you. I know that this was a big thing that you were a part of, creating a virtual library room, a virtual reading room for your users. I'm so excited to hear maybe in the chat or through the questions later on how that worked for you. What a really excellent idea. In my own university, we had planned an actual on-site exhibition to mark the 70th anniversary for the Schuman Declaration as part of the EU and the European Union. We had to very quickly move that online, and so make good use of our LibGuides and our website to create a virtual exhibition. at Low 90 are doing brilliant work in helping their users think about the mindfulness and the health and well-being of their users through bringing together their resources on site. Again, tons and tons of initiatives happening right throughout the academic library sector that just speaks to the nature of Irish libraries. And of course, our hosts here in Maynooth have not only brought us together today for this conference, but also done stellar engagement work virtually through their online poetry workshops that I've heard great things about from some folks who attended that. So again, never look at crisis, never let that stop us continuing to continue to improve and create and innovate. It makes me proud to be a part of this profession. Like many of you, academic libraries are beginning to think about what's next, what does that new future look like? So we're keeping a very close eye on that 5-phase government plan, and in UCC, we're mapping our activities, wondering when we can enhance our services and eventually reopen the doors of our libraries. So we're planning that right now. Of course, with the actual work safety protocols in mind, it's quite alarming to imagine that our capacity of our library, our beautiful library in UCC and libraries all over the country, we're probably facing a dramatic reduction in capacity in terms of numbers that can walk through the door. And what does that mean, and how do we move that forward? So the work is only really just beginning. And I just want to say, because I think it's important, that this isn't business as usual. You know, we've been able to continue to operate a library service, but it needs to be said that this is not unusual. We are not in normal times. And I hope before too long that we're able to come together and celebrate like this, but also in person, the phenomenal work that we've all been doing, academic libraries and outside, in making sure that our users are able to continue to enjoy the services and the collections that we offer. And it needs to be said that this isn't usual. Just one final reflection for me before I head away. I've discovered fairly quickly in this time frame that the strengths and weaknesses within our systems are absolutely magnified in this virtual online doors closed environment. And what I mean by that is, for many of us, or all of us, the strengths in our system are our staff. Our staff have played a blinder and have really helped to show what academic libraries can do. And without our staff, we'd be really lost. And they've gone above and beyond in this mad time. And also the weaknesses that academic libraries typically have to deal with, which is licensing and access and really frustrating restrictions to collections based on publisher ridiculousness. They're even more frustrating in the online sphere that we're in now. And so we've sort of had this weird bubble where the great things are even greater, and just the really crummy things just continue to be a really bugbear and a frustration for us. So I hope that just gives you a quick overview, a quick sense of the brilliant work that the academic libraries have been doing, and I look forward to joining the conversation later on. But for now, I'll mute my mic, I'll unshare my screen, and can't wait to hear what others will tell us about their industries as well. Thanks, everyone.